And we welcome you to the 2017-2018 East Coast Conference Women's Basketball Preseason Podcast right here on d2easthoops.org alongside the regional experts, Steve Zerdelian and Chris Granozio, Don Familo producing the program. I'm Tim McCaffrey. Let's start with the St. Thomas Aquinas Spartans. 19-11 a year ago, Steve, and Kim Lust's club trending upwards.
Yeah, a lot of players back here. Jenna Erickson among the better scorers and shooters in the conference. Adia Henderson and Alex Bertolino among the other veterans that are back. St. Thomas Aquinas is interesting. They've been on the fringe of the NCAA field and challenging for the ECC title for the last 3 or 4 years. There's been some losses among other teams, and this is going to open the door a little bit for the Spartans to maybe get to the top of the league. We're going to see how they react to being a favorite as opposed to a team that's trying to challenge the favorites.
Yeah, that's my point exactly, Steve. Is I was a little surprised to see them picked number one in this league over Roberts Wesleyan by the coaches, but Kim Lust's team has really done a nice job the last couple of years of getting that team from mediocrity up to a level where they could compete, and I expect that they will certainly contend for the title this year.
We often talk about the snow globe effect of the Northeast 10 Conference, a little bit of a snow globe effect in the ECC this season, as we'll get to as we go here. The New York Institute of Technology, 18-12 a year ago, and one of 3 ECC teams to make the NCAA.
Yeah, first-year coach Kenny Parham did a really nice job with this team, in particular after the loss of their terrific interior player, Shannon Dewar, to injury. Managed to retool the team and get them to the NCAA field. They had a surge late to do that. Still some good players coming back, too, even though they have some losses. Meg Nolmeyer had an excellent freshman season. Nina Vukosavljevic, one of the better perimeter players in the East Coast Conference. And, they've lost some players. Shanice Allen and Julie Williams are also gone. But a couple of new players in, including a Division I transfer, could help this team really take that next step. And I would expect them to be in the mix again. I'm not sure they're going to win the East Coast Conference in terms of they have to develop the depth needed to do so, but I think they're going to be in the picture.
Roberts Wesleyan 21-13 a year ago, and they are knocking on that NCAA tournament door.
I'm a big fan of Roberts Wesleyan. I think Gary Andrews has done an outstanding job with that program. They had such great success at the NAIA level, transitioning to D2. They've done well also. They've got a very talented team. There are a couple of superb sophomores on this roster. Taya Andrews and Emily Miller had great freshman seasons. A lot of good veteran players coming back. Lucy Covley, an excellent three-point shooter, and Nasita James as well. Experience, depth, size. They have all the elements here, and they've won tournaments. They won the National Christian Tournament a couple of seasons ago, so I think the time is right for the Redhawks to win the ECC.
And only one key loss here in Brooke Fields. I think they can really build out a 21-win campaign from last year.
What an interesting club the Purple Knights of Bridgeport were a season ago under Jen Carlton. They could beat anybody in the region and lose to anybody in the region. Is that going to be the case this year?
Yes, probably. By a scorecard, because there are a lot of new faces here, a lot of whom will play. 5 newcomers, all D1 transfers. Who knows how this is going to turn out? They've lost some players as well. The key returnees, Samuel Vonley anchoring the middle, Nicole Johnson returns, and Khadijah Dixon back from an injury-hit season will help give Bridgeport some stability. But really, it's all about how the newcomers fit in and how they coalesce and create a new team. It might take a little time for their identity to emerge, but I think if it goes properly, the Purple Knights could be a team, once you get to February, that nobody wants to touch.
It's rare that a team that made the NCAA Tournament Elite 8 a season ago and finished 27-5 would be picked to finish in the middle of the pack of the East Coast Conference. But that's the case for Queens this year, as they lost quite a bit.
Well, it's also rare to see a player like Madison Rowland, one of the best players in regional history, and let's not overlook the loss of Mackenzie Rowland, her sister, another outstanding player. These two were so good last year that they carried the Knights to the regional championship, fully deserved, by the way. And although there are still some very good players back, Bet Namofsky's team is just naturally going to take a step back. There is a third Rowland, Merrick Rowland, who comes back and had a solid season last year. Good freshman year from Beth Bonin on the perimeter as well. But in fairness, they have to find a new identity. And we talk about identities with teams all the time. When you lose players of that caliber, it's just natural. You're going to have to take a step back and figure out who you are going forward. And I think Namofsky, an outstanding coach, is going to find a way to do it. I just don't see the firepower for them to get back to that stage.
Namofsky, kind of like Chris Krause on the men's side with Stonehill, a Canadian, and did a great job, like Chris Krause, getting her team to the Elite 8. 5 newcomers on the team, 3 transfers. They'll certainly have to make some strides for Queens to stay at the lofty levels.
For as much as Queens loses, LIU Post doesn't lose that much at all. An 11-17 squad a year ago for Deidre Moore. Is that team on the way up?
I think they're definitely trending upward. And here's a great advert for stability. Deidre Moore's been there a long time, has had some very good teams. A couple of years ago, they sort of bottomed out, lost a lot of players, had to build from the bottom up, and they're in the process of doing that. They got one of the ECC's better players in Micaiah Moore. I think she's really terrific, and they've got a lot of other contributing players. Kylie Garrett, Kristen Olsen on the perimeter. Sasha Patterson had a nice season inside. Didn't lose a whole lot either, so I'm expecting a flip of this record. They were 11-17 last year. Is not beyond the realm of comprehension that they flip that around and emerge as a real ECC challenger.
The other regional Sweet 16 team, also from the East Coast Conference last year, as it was a regional final of East Coast Conference teams, Malloy, another team that lost a lot under Joe Pelican, who has a knack for making teams better.
Yeah, and he will do it again. The losses here are quite significant. Kamala Thompson, Aaliyah McDonald, and Simone Kelly among the losses here for Malloy. And they pushed Queens all the way in the regional championship game. Still some pieces back here. Innocence Grady is a very good ball handler and a player who can run the show on the floor. Michaela Hernandez and Catherine Gibson were supporting players last year that played key roles. And they're going to need to have new players get into the mix. And they'll do that again. And Pelican is the kind of coach who will just get the players out there, play a tough schedule, take some losses early to get the benefits later on. Whether they can reach the heights that they reached last year, I don't think that that's probably in the cards this year, but it's not going to take long for them to regenerate.
For Damon, 11-15 a year ago, it's a new era there in Buffalo.
Jennifer Banker took over last year, had a solid season. They didn't have a lot of depth, but they do have one of my favorite players in the region, Sarah Saba, and some good support players. Jordan Heinold and Karina Pringle also had good seasons. If Banker brought her first recruiting class in this year, that's what they need. They need to build some depth. They need to find some interior play as well. And that's a team, if things go well, I think they could pass 500 and take a couple of steps up and challenge for an ECC playoff berth.
And holding up the rest of the East Coast Conference a season ago was the University of the District of Columbia. They have a new head coach this year, and he hopes to improve on a 3-25 season a year ago. Yeah,
it's a long rebuild ahead here. They've got 10 newcomers this season, just a couple of returnees, and they were both sophomores this year. So taking over, John Nakpodi has got a lot of work to do. Did recruit some good players, but it's tough to have success right away in a conference that is getting better every year. So I think some baby steps forward for UDC might be really the measure of success this season.
And one last school here, Mercy. Jim Harder, once a men's coach at Pace, now a women's coach for the Mavericks.
They won 4 games a year ago, and they have virtually the entire roster back. Whether that's good news or bad news, we'll have to see. Just by dint of experience and time, they'll probably be more competitive. The question of win total, we'll have to see. If all things go well, they could double their win total, maybe even potentially push for a playoff spot, but there's a lot of ground to make up there for the Mavericks.
And that wraps up our East Coast Conference Women's Basketball 2017-2018 preseason podcast. We hope you listen to other podcasts right here on D2EastHoops.org. For the producer, Don Familo, and the D2 experts, Steve Zerdelian and Chris Granozio, I'm Tim McCaffrey. And stay tuned for more of our podcast right here on D2EastHoops.org.